Do we need somebody?
Okay, that was easy.
It was magic.
Yes, it was magic. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to the February meeting of the Finance Committee.
I don't think.
First up on the agenda are the adoption of the meeting minutes from the Finance Committee meeting back in December 8th. And I know we all got a copy of those minutes. Can I please get a motion to approve those meeting minutes, which are behind tab 2?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
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 All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, those meeting minutes are adopted. We're going to be addressing 4 resolutions today. First up, behind tab 3, is the BOCES program lease refunding revenue bonds. We're doing that twice, right? The first one is up for Oneida Herkimer Madison issue, and Steve will present that. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. The single approval staff report presents a tax-exempt fixed-rate bond issue of an amount not to exceed $34 million to advance refund Series 2008 bonds issued by DASNY on behalf of the Oneida Herkimer Madison BOCES. The Series 2008 bonds are the only bonds outstanding for this particular BOCES. The bonds are expected to be rated AA2 by Moody's, and they will be secured by annual rental payments to be made pursuant to a lease agreement with the BOCES, direct intercept through the state comptroller of any state aid due to the BOCES for rental payments on the DASNY lease agreement, pledge of public funds apportioned by the state due to the BOCES in an amount sufficient to pay such rental payments, and a 1/2-year debt service reserve fund or a reserve fund facility. Bond insurance may be considered depending on its availability and economic efficiency, and this will be determined at the time of pricing. The refunding bonds will have a final maturity which will not exceed the final maturity on the bonds being refunded. And the refunding is expected to result in net present value savings of approximately $2.6 million or 9.0% of the bonds being refunded. Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions?
I had none, Mr. Chairman.
Anything from Albany?
No.
Hearing none. Can I please get a motion to recommend approval of this offering at Wednesday's board meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none. We'll recommend that on Wednesday. Next up behind 4 is the Genesee Valley issue. Same BOCES program lease revenue bond.
This will be very familiar. The single approval staff report presents a tax-exempt fixed-rate bond issue in an amount not to exceed $27 million to advance refund Series 2008 bonds issued by DASNY on behalf of the Genesee Valley BOCES. The 2008 bonds are the only bonds outstanding for this particular BOCES. The bonds are expected to be rated AA2 by Moody's. The bonds will be secured by annual rental payments to be made pursuant to a lease agreement with the BOCES, direct intercept through the state comptroller of any state aid due to the BOCES for rental payments on the DASNY lease agreement, pledge of public funds apportioned by the state due to the BOCES in an amount sufficient to pay such rental payments, and a 1/2-year debt service reserve fund or a reserve fund facility. Bond insurance may be considered depending on its availability and economic efficiency. The refunding bonds will have a final maturity which will not exceed the final maturity on the bonds being refunded, and this refunding is expected to result in net present value savings of approximately $989,000 or 3.4% of the bonds being refunded.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions?
None here, Mr. Chairman.
In Albany? Did they make the secret filing, by the way?
They did.
They did. Good. Thank you. Hearing none, can I please get a motion to recommend approval at Wednesday's full board meeting?
So
Motion.
moved.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. All in favor, aye. Any opposed? None. Hearing none, we'll recommend approval. Moving on, we still have Steve. Behind tab 5 is the Culinary Institute of America. Thank you, Steve.
Okay. The Finance Committee is being asked to recommend for approval from the full board to adopt a resolution proceed for one or more series of fixed-rate, tax-exempt, and/or taxable bonds to be sold in a negotiated sale with final maturities not to exceed 31 years in an amount not to exceed $65 million on behalf of the Culinary Institute of America. The Culinary Institute, which was founded in 1946, has a strong reputation as one of the premier culinary schools in the nation. The Institute's main campus is located in Hyde Park, New York. The Institute also has campuses in California, Texas, and Singapore, which contribute to the overall operations of the Institute. The Culinary Institute is an educational corporation organized under the laws of the State of New York and authorized by the State of New York law and the Board of Regents to confer degrees. DASNY first issued bonds for the Culinary Institute in 1972. The Institute currently has approximately $107.5 million in 7 separate series of DASNY bonds outstanding. All of the outstanding DASNY bonds were used to either finance new money projects at the New York campus or to refinance debt that was used to finance projects at the New York campus. The board should be aware that in 1992, staff presented a proposal of the Culinary Institute to finance a project in California using DASNY bond proceeds. Ultimately, the California portion of that financing was not considered by the board. As you're aware, the world in which the colleges and universities compete is constantly changing. Institutions are developing new models with an increased focus on the student experience, oftentimes extending beyond the boundaries of the campus. The Culinary Institute has responded to this competitive environment with the opening of its 3 branch campuses, which the Institute believes each strengthen the Institute's brand, prestige, and operations. In addition, students enrolled at the New York campus have the ability to attend these branch campuses to gain specialized knowledge from some of the leading educators in their field. Series 2016 bonds are expected to be issued to finance approximately $25 million in new money projects in New York and California. Approximately $2 million of this will be used for renovations to the restaurants at the New York campus, and approximately $23 million will be used at the Institute's California campus, including renovations at its Greystone property, located in St. Helena, California, and at the newly acquired Copia property, located in Napa, California. The renovations at Greystone will be for teaching kitchens, classrooms, and a storeroom. The renovations at Copia will be for a demonstration kitchen, office space, an amphitheater, and parking. DASNY has the statutory ability to issue bonds for the California facilities because the California campus serves matriculating students enrolled in a course of study whose degrees are granted by the Institute pursuant to its power to confer degrees by New York State law and the Board of Regents of the state. All of the courses are directly offered by the Institute, whose curriculum is registered by the New York State Education Department. The staff report provides the members with an overview of the overall operations of the Institute and provides some additional information on the California campus to give the members a sense of how the California campus and the project benefit the operations and the mission of the Institute overall. The California campus location in Napa Valley is a strong draw for students and for leading faculty in the industry. While the California campus offers an associate degree that are also offered at the New York campus, unique to the California campus are the certificate programs in culinary arts and in wine and beverage studies. The California campus is also home to the Institute's Food Business School, which is its new center for executive and graduate education. In addition, students enrolled at the New York campus are provided a unique opportunity to spend a semester in California to study advanced wine, beverage, and hospitality in the heart of Napa Valley wine country, or to study farm-to-table cooking at the epicenter of the farm-to-table movement in Northern California. In late 2015, the Institute purchased the Copia property in part because the Greystone facility was at its capacity. The project, to be funded with the Series 2016 bond proceeds, will allow for increased capacity at the California campus, which will also allow for increased use of the semester away program for New York students to study in California. California students are also encouraged to transfer to the New York campus to continue with their education and pursue a bachelor's degree, as bachelor's degrees are only offered at the New York campus. In addition to the new money project, Series 2016 bond proceeds are expected to be used to refund certain outstanding DASNY bonds of the Institute. The refunding bonds will have final maturities that will not exceed the final maturities on the bonds being refunded. The Institute will be refunding its DASNY-issued fixed-rate Series 2004A and Series 2004B bonds, which collectively have approximately $7 million outstanding. The refunding of the Series 2004A and Series 2004B bonds are expected to result in net present value savings of approximately $441,000, or 6.3% of the bonds being refunded. The Institute is also considering refunding its DASNY-issued variable rate 2004C bonds, as well as financing the swap termination costs associated with these bonds. The refunding of these bonds would require an escrow deposit of approximately $24 million. The swap termination cost is estimated to be approximately $4 million. The refunding of the variable rate debt with fixed rate debt would reduce the Institute's variable rate exposure and potential collateral posting requirements. The Institute expects to make a decision on whether they intend to move forward with the refunding of their Series 2004C bonds at its next board meeting later this month. The swap advisor will be used. With the new money project, as well as the refunding of the Institute's Series 2004A, Series 2004B, and Series 2004C bonds, the estimated par is approximately $52 million. Staff is requesting a not-to-exceed amount of $65 million to accommodate any potential changes in market conditions, including the use of a par or discount structure. The Institute is currently rated Baa2 by Moody's. Therefore, security for the bonds is expected to include a general obligation of the Institute, a pledge of tuition and fees, and a mortgage on a portion of the Institute's New York campus. The loan agreement between the Institute and DASNY will also contain financial covenants. A debt service reserve fund is not expected, and also the Institute's Series 2013 bonds were issued without a debt service reserve fund. Municipal bond insurance may be used if available and economically advantageous. This will be determined at the time of pricing. Regarding enrollment, the Institute draws students from all 50 states and 40 countries. Over 80% of the student body comes from outside of New York State, including 15% from outside of the United States. Headcount enrollment of the Institute has averaged nearly 2,900 students over the past 5 years. In the fall of 2015, the Institute reported its highest fall enrollment in its history, with 2,940 students. The New York campus enrolled 82% of these students, California enrolled 10% of the students, Texas enrolled 5%, and Singapore enrolled 3%. Despite having more unrestricted net assets than total liabilities, the Institute's balance sheet shows somewhat limited liquidity, with a viability ratio that is expected to drop from 1.0 to 1 to 0.8 to 1 with this transaction. It is common to see these levels in this rating category, and DASNY has issued bonds for institutions with a lower ratio, including for the Institute in 2013, which when we came to the board, it had a viability ratio of 0.9 to 1 and was expected to drop to 0.7 to 1 with that transaction. In fact, all of the liquidity and capital ratios have remained steady or improved since staff presented to the board in 2013. The Institute has strong philanthropic support for an institution in its rating category, with average gifts of $12.8 million over the last 5 years. The Institute is in the midst of a $101 million capital campaign that is scheduled to conclude in 2017. The campaign will supplement the endowment to support future capital projects, financial aid, and faculty and research funds. While the Institute is dependent on student-related charges, with 66% of its revenues coming from net tuition and fees and 13% coming from auxiliaries, it has reported operating gains each year for nearly 4 decades. Over the past 5 years, increases in net assets from operations have averaged over $8.2 million, which equates to an average operating margin of 5.7%. The Institute is forecasting an operating gain in its current fiscal year as well. The Institute has always paid its debt service on time and in full, and is in compliance with the financial covenants contained in the existing bond documents. With the proposed bond issue, the Institute has projected debt service coverage ratios greater than 2.2 to 1 over the next 5 years. Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that thorough presentation.
Thank you, Steve.
Any questions? I have a couple.
A couple of comments, Mr. Chairman. At bottom, I support this transaction strongly, believing that it's an appropriate transaction for us to undertake. We've gotten advice from our legal staff that verifies that there are no legal impediments to undertaking this transaction. It is in the amount of $65 million, $23 million of which will likely be used outside of New York State. That is an acceptable. It is appropriate for us to make that decision, and indeed, if it's voted tomorrow by the full board, then we will have made that decision. The institute is to some extent tuition dependent, but I've asked Steve, and he has explained to me that while 66% of their revenues come from net tuition and fees, 13% come from what are called auxiliaries. I always have to be reminded that that's food service and books and whatever else they might require. Finally, I understand that staff has spoken with the Department of the Budget, and that they have expressed satisfaction with the transaction. So I support the transaction, and I don't have any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I certainly support the transaction as well, Steve, but I have a couple of questions. I also would note I think it's very important that the students from the New York side of the institution can go to California and they can enhance their learning experiences in California with this other type of facility. I think that's, to me personally, that's an important consideration. The other thing I just wanted to just reconfirm is that the equivalent of the California Dormitory Authority, whatever that name might be, it's my understanding that they could not actually participate in issuing them, issue those bonds because the charter was in New York. My understanding is correct on that?
That's correct.
That's correct. That's the decision that they made in 2008.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Right, okay. But it's not like we're going and taking their clients as students. Okay.
Just as a, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just as an FYI, I had an opportunity to talk to one of the county leaders in Dutchess, and they lamented that they were not able to do this financing.
Mhm.
So they said, we're
Right.
very sorry that DASNY is taking this opportunity.
Well, good for us.
So,
Good for us.
you know,
It's a
and
good
at two
opportunity,
levels,
but-
and at
right.
two levels, this is important because we talked about being competitive and being able to respond and really act on behalf of many of the partners across the state. Here's clearly one where we have an intrinsic advantage, and number two, they recognize as well as a local partner to CIA that this was something that was important to the institution and certainly important to Dutchess County and important to the state. And we got that.
Certainly, it's a very
Yeah.
important institution for Dutchess.
Yep. So,
Dutchess is a very important county for New York State. It's a
Absolutely.
wonderful county. It
absolutely.
has some wonderful institutions. Many of our clients there.
Wish I could afford to live there.
The other, you can't get a mortgage on the California property. Is that just?
I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think
That was part of the transaction.
I think it's their preference and our preference to have
Okay.
a mortgage on the New York.
On the New York
properties.
property, but okay.
And the mortgage on the New York property is deemed by staff to be at an appropriate level. We have been able to, partition some of the property. We're taking a mortgage on some specific properties.
Yeah, I don't think it's been finalized yet, but it will be negotiated before we come back
Okay.
for adoption of documents.
Sure.
And then the enrollment levels, they seem to fluctuate a little bit, but they seem to be pretty steady even over the last couple of years. Right?
Yeah, I think new freshman enrollment has declined slightly over the last few years, but overall headcount has remained steady, and that's a factor, multiple factors, retention, students enrolling in the bachelor's program outside of the associate's program, which doesn't get included in the freshman enrollment numbers. So the overall headcount's been pretty.
And we were able to sort of deal with the seeker issue about getting the whatever we needed to get covered out in California covered. We worked our way through that, I guess.
So that's another item that will be taken care
Because
of.
we're all available to get out there
Right, I think
if necessary. I think,
Especially the
In fact, I
wine.
might actually have a motion to have the finance committee meeting do a special investigation. Kidding. Go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
No, that's something that will be settled needs to be settled before we come back for adoption of documents.
Okay.
But I think the expectation is that the
But
New
you'll get
York
it through.
portion will have seeker in New York, and the California portion will have seeker.
Or its
in
equivalent in
California.
California.
You need separate counsel out there, I guess, or
Excuse me?
the separate California Council to deal with their equivalent of super, or we'll have to figure that out. That's
We'll
up for
figure it
Mike
out. There
and
may be
finally-
consultants, but
Okay. Any other questions from anything up in Albany?
I have none.
Okay, thank you. Hearing none. First, I'd like to compliment Portia and Steve on a very thorough presentation, and I think it's a good thing for DASNY. I know these are different times, and things are changing in the education world, so thank you. Can I get a motion to recommend approval at the full board at Wednesday's board meeting?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any, can I get a motion? Okay, so,
All in favor?
all in favor? Thank you very much. Aye, any opposed?
None.
None opposed, motion carries, we'll recommend approval.
Donna Rosen, I know that you are in the room, and I know that you have supported Debbie in all the work that's been done on this transaction. You don't often attend these meetings, so I wanted to say thank you on behalf of all those of us who've read all those documents and all that work that you and others have done. Thanks very much.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, behind 6 is it TELP financing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Portia will present. Thank you, Portia.
Behind tab 6 is the TELP financing for United Health Services Hospitals, Inc. in the amount of $8.8 billion. As you know, it's a current policy of Public Authorities Control Board that TELP financings which exceed $10 million in a 12-month period be brought before the board and PACB for approval. This would be the second TELP financing on behalf of this institution within a 12-month period, and the second is being brought before this committee. Basically, there's an attached equipment list, but the equipment of note I would highlight would be various OR equipment as well as radiology equipment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks very much. I see the CAT scanner, which is a big portion of it too, Portia.
$2 million worth.
$2 million, yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I get a motion to recommend approval, full board on Wednesday?
So moved.
Second, thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. That motion carries. Unless there's anything else that anyone would like to add to this agenda, I'll then request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Second.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Thank you very much. That concludes the February meeting of the Finance Committee. Thank you.
What did you